Greetings, dear viewers. Welcome to Diaspora Point. This is your host, Omabella. Today, we are going to give you news that is not the best because not every day is spring day and not every day is sunshine everywhere. The same thing is happening on the continent. Africa is having an issue in some countries, serious issues. And we are talking about Kenya and Togo. And those are the two countries we are going to update you, dear viewers, about what is going on in those two countries. And we want to thank you before we get started for your loyal viewing. We appreciate you and we try our best to make sure that we research the information we bring to you and to make sure that the information is helpful to all of you and to all of us, because what is going on in Africa today, we really need to be up to date. And you know, it's happening so fast. Every day is a different something happening. And we want to try to make sure that we are up to date for you. We have been away for a bit. We had to take care of some housekeeping issues. We are back and welcome back to Diaspora Point. We thank you and we appreciate you. And now today, with us is our expert political analyst, Miss Grace Jibril. Karibu, Grace. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So about Kenya, I will say something and then Grace will chime in as we speak. We will have it as usual, have it as a discussion as we always do. Kenya is having a problem for a while, and especially since 2024. When the Gen Zs protested about the budget which was punitive and which they could see will keep sinking them, will keep them without jobs. And for that reason, the Gen Zs went out on the streets. They protested. According to statistics from experts, the human rights groups, 60 Gen Zs died that day. 60 people died that day, June 25th, 2024. Now, fast forward, the Gen Zs planned to memorialize their fellow, the fallen brothers and sisters. And that is when they were planning for June 25th, another young man was killed in police custody, hauled all the way over 300 and something kilometers from his rural home, brought to the central police station, killed. The police tried to say he killed himself. Of course not. The autopsy finding was different. So this young man called Ojwang, Albert Ojwang, was killed in police custody. So that the investigations about that is ongoing, but the people came out to show their solidarity with the Ojwang family. Ojwang was a blogger. He was a teacher. He was teaching a school, but he was also a blogger and, in fact, an environmentalist. He was a very dynamic young man. And at his tender age, they killed him. Ojwang died at that age, very young, very dynamic, a man who didn't do any crime. He did not commit any crime. All he did was he just passed on some information he also received that police were corrupt in Kenya. And I think that is not news. That is something that we have had to deal with for a very long time, and everybody knows about it. So with Ojwang's death, there were demonstrations on the street, and then that was very close to the 25th, and then 25th came, which is a memory of those who died June 25th, 2024. Now, this was authorized. In Kenya, the constitution allows demonstration for people to express themselves. And what all they need to do is to inform the police where they are going to demonstrate. And the mothers and the organizers and those who are interested went to the police station and informed the police in charge that they will be demonstrating on the 25th in memory of those who passed on the 25th of 2024. So this, we are now talking about 2025. Now, they brought together the mothers, the parents of the late colleagues, late friends who were killed in 2024, so that they can come and lay wreaths in the spots where their children were killed, And also in parliament, where some other children, they were not children, young adults, Gen Zs were killed. Now, the parents came together, and in one instance, in fact, very sad, all of it is sad. In one instance, the former Chief Justice, Justice Maraga, those who follow Kenyan news, I think you remember the judge, the Chief Justice who overturned the victory of President Uhuru and who called for fresh elections. And that was probably the first in Africa, definitely the first in Africa. He was very well celebrated. He's an older gentleman in his 60s. He came out with the parents of the fallen young people, and he was on the streets to go and lay wreath and also just to pay homage to the young people who are killed.
Doing nothing that you can call violence. Yeah? So it is extremely unfortunate that the police cannot see that. The police cannot see that. Instead, they are just dispersing it. So now it is clear that the problems are actually the police, not the demonstrators. Not the demonstrators. Because I was with this. I mean, what violence would you expect this mama to be there? One of them has been dispersed. I don't know where she is. It's very unfortunate that this can happen in our country. So, respect for picketing is thrown out of the window. And that's extremely unfortunate. What this is saying is that you have no right to say no. You have no right to say I disagree. And that's what we are saying. The government should be there, it should be ready to be criticized. And people, reasonable Kenyans will see where there is unreasonable criticism and they will themselves voice. But when you do this, in fact, you even now lose the sympathy of the Kenyans who would otherwise have been on your side. And when they are excited, that is not violence. Tell me, what have these people broken? You were here, the media people, you saw what was going on. Did they break any building? They were just excited and singing, and saying, we want justice. That's what we want. So, the best way, and I want to appeal to all Kenyans, to seriously think about voting in a government that will respect the law, that will call the country to order. And that's what we are appealing. So, you have seen it for yourselves. And let's leave it there.
And while on the street, Justice Maraga says himself, some police car came and lobbed tear gas at him and the parents that they were, the mothers, one was on his right, one was on his left. He doesn't know what happened to the one on his left. The one on his right, they were able to run to the nearest TV station, Nation TV, and they were able to talk about it. So that is how bad it was. Now, the story here, and I'm going to stop for a bit so that our expert can also say a bit. The story here is that the demonstrators are civil people. They're educated, these people with degrees, people who have been looking for jobs, cannot get jobs, or watching their siblings or their, parents. People have no jobs. And their intention has always been to express themselves, to plead with the government, and to let the government understand that what is happening is not right. People cannot be overtaxed. At the same time, people have to have jobs. Kenya is not developing industrially. In fact, industrialization of Kenya has dropped to, I think, a tune of 20%, something I saw. And I'm just trying to say that they are not people who are causing chaos and burning cars and burning tires on the streets. These are people, another team, also a young group that is usually hired by, as they say, by the politicians to come and discredit the demonstration, to give the government a reason to beat up and shoot up on the Gen Zs. Now, for that reason, even the parents of the Gen Zs, many of them came out this time, and now it's not Gen Zs like just the Generation Z. Now it is Gen Zote, meaning the generation of all of us. So that's what is happening in Kenya. These are organized youth. They don't have other motivation than the fact that they want good governance. And there will be clips that you will see where they just want good governance. They come out, as one of the organizers said, what has been happening is almost like a carnival. You come out, you demonstrate, you express yourself, you take your petition to the police, and then what happens is it becomes a running battle with the police. When the police get a little rough, they throw a canister of tear gas, and people run off, and then people come back again. It is a running battle that has not involved any violence. Gen Zs come out with water and flag, Kenya's flag, and they're fun. So this is what has been happening in Kenya. But unfortunately, even on this memorial, to honor the 60 who died, another 20 people died. So I will just ask our expert analyst to chime in and to tell us some of what she thinks. Karibu, Grace.
Hi, how are you all? It's a lot to uncover from what you said. The one thing that I think is of note is, unlike last year, it took a great deal of time before the international community spoke up about the 60 or so dead. And at the time, there was the massive protest on the 25th of June last year, where I think Kenyans themselves were very surprised that authorities essentially turned on their own people. It was extremely surprising. So there was an expectation this year that there would be violence. But this year, it just seems that the international community was more alert, and multiple embassies, multiple governments sent joint press releases expressing just concerns about the lack of freedoms, use of violence, and specifically, which is in the public domain, allegations of the government's efforts to hire thugs in order to effect violence by the police. So things like that are, quite frankly, a public relations disaster for any administration. Um, and one thing that occurs, if you remember the BBC report that caused a whole bunch of arrests of filmmakers who had assisted the BBC, you find that now these things are being recorded. And if you look closely at the protests, it's not just cameras and cell phones that are being used with a blackout by the media, which is another PR issue. Not sure who is advising Ruto, but he's getting terrible advice, and it's very unfortunate. But they're using drones now. So, there's so much technology as it relates to drones, sizes, shapes, things like that. And then the protesters are getting bolder. They understand that they're being monitored from an internet perspective. And it's now turned into essentially what is the inner makings of guerrilla warfare. Now, in the speech the president made, which on the face of it it was a good political speech. Clearly, a consultant gave him a good speech to write. But if you look deeper into the speech, it was a bit bone chilling, because one of the comments that was made is eh, neither you or I want the country to burn, something to that effect. So we're hearing what's going on in Sudan, and we're hearing, allegations of, Kenyan weapons in the Sudan conflict. I just, the question that he had was, how do I leave,
Tell me how you want me to go. What? I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. What do you mean? What do you mean by Ruto must go? How do I go? Because we have a constitution in place, dear people, right?
And it's sad, because I hope that we're not in a situation where, if I can't have Kenya, no one can, where we'll just descend. But the thing that takes my mind away from that and gives me a great deal of hope is the level of investment, both from the African diaspora and the international community. Israel has a massive embassy in Kenya. Politically, we know that they're very close to the United States ally, whose embassy is across the street from the Israeli embassy. Down the street is the Belgian embassy. Across the street from them, in some adjacent space, is the United Nations headquarters itself. So, international governments, no matter what the agenda is for whichever president we have in Kenya, won't allow Kenya to fall. And if you recall, 2007 violence, that was stated by Condoleezza Rice's assistant. He was very clear that the United States does not intend for Kenya to fall. And if you
Negroponte,
guys
right?
recall, John Negroponte, precisely. So if you recall, Kenya was in worse shape than we could ever think of, ever. So one of the things that I think politicians in Kenya need to 360 and look, we have allowed international organizations, governments to influence our political structures so much so that they themselves have incredible investments in Kenya that they are not intent on losing. On the Eastern European side, there are many Eastern European organizations and government agents, et cetera, who have massive investments in Kenya also, whether it be laundering or otherwise. So Kenya benefits from a lot of things that go beyond, what we're seeing on the news. What we have to understand is that the issue of Gen Z is not going anywhere. This issue can be fixed by simply looking at the revenue that Kenyans, Mama Mboga, and all the street vendors give through M-Pesa and other automated modes of cash revenue. It's an extremely large amount of money. Kenya has one of the biggest economies in sub-Saharan Africa. We have the money. There's no reason why schools should not be funded, even to university, as Traore is doing. There's no reason why hospitals cannot have the appropriate funding. There's no reason why there are delays in both local and national government payrolls. These are just facts. And, back to the point of the president, you don't want to burn the country. Where will we go? I think he was projecting on himself because he has so much money in the bank that he owns in Kenya, where a lot of the tax revenue is going, specifically, I guess, for him, that if Kenya falls, he won't be able to have that closed cocoon where he's controlling things. His country is much more important to him than it is to us, to be frank, from my analysis. So, what's my thought? If I were Ruto, I would have stuck with the image I had when I was first president. The truth is, you can steal all you want. American politicians steal. They just do it more strategically. But they don't take the whole pot and they don't allow people to be struggling. Well, right now in America, it's getting to the point where we're dealing with Kenyan politics in America, whereby the greed is so much. Lobby groups have taken some pay politicians to an extent where government cannot function or is going to a point where it cannot function because someone is afraid of upsetting a campaign donor. But you take it from a microscopic perspective to Kenya, and you essentially see the same thing. Our politicians are purchased by powerful politicians. You remember last year, everyone said there was 3 million on the table for everyone who votes for the 2024 finance bill. That's what came out. So you just wonder how many people have sold their souls in politics and are unable to speak. And then when you realize that may be the case, maybe you wonder then how are we going to get out of this issue? Meanwhile, Gen Zs are still on their agenda. We don't care who's paid you. We don't care what you've done. We just want things to work. And it's not a hard lift for the government to start supporting these young people. The best way to get young people out of your hair is to make them busy. Create programs by which training centers are created, partner with international organizations, whatever you got to do, and get these guys in spaces. That's how Traore is managing his young people. He's got them in factories learning vocational skills training. He's got them in farms learning how to farm as part of their National Youth Service Corps type of thing. And they're examples all across Africa and stable countries whereby Kenya can get some lessons learned. And further out, there are programs in European nations and in China, like the way China moved an entire population of almost 3 billion people out of the rural area, out of poverty, and into agriculture technology, computer technology, etc. etc. So there are ways, and I don't understand, besides the fact that there's just greed running around rampant, why implementation processes cannot happen. So it's unfortunate, but Gen Zs are the lion of Africa. Everyone is talking about it. Kenyan youth are exceptionally brilliant. They're exceptionally strategic. And what's funny about every single war, and if you read Sun Tzu, every war you lose, you actually win because you learn the strategies of your enemy.
Yeah.
And then you improve on the next encounter.
Yeah.
Then you improve on the next encounter. But make sure at all costs you keep thinking ahead because you place yourself in a high position while your enemy is in a low position. I feel like the Kenyan government is in a low position. They don't realize they're actually looking up and they're surrounded by an entire infantry of Gen Z, and they need to do something about it. And sooner or later, that infantry will come down that valley and completely demolish them, whether it means a country burns or not. I think Gen Zs are smart enough to know that this levels where they won't do things. This is where the criminality comes in,
And, yeah.
where Gen Z is being accused. But at the same time, you get people desperate enough, they will do desperate things. Remember last year was more like protesting.
Yeah.
And just this year, they had rocks and you saw police officers running for their lives, essentially. So, we're seeing structures of force that now they're starting to display that really, if we keep ignoring this issue, it is not going away. And then you said something very important. It's becoming intergenerational now. Before, it was just a bunch of young knuckleheads who were internet watchers and TikTok buddies and Yahoo boys, as they call it in Nigeria. But now it's turning into a more structured process where even the justice, the Chief Justice of Kenya, United States, Chief Justice of Kenya is involved, along with many, many other politicians.
Yeah.
Anglican community, particularly the canon, and all those pastors and clergy who were able to join today in commemorating this very important historic occasion. Sad as it is part of our history, and so although the canon says the second anniversary, but I think to a majority of Kenyans, they will remember that the 25th of June last year was the day when Kenyans, under the Constitution 2010, chose to exercise their sovereign rights.
First, I want to thank the judges for this service. This coming together as churches is to tell everybody that the Gen Zs who died and who are being killed are our children. And we can't stand idle and watch as they die. Number two, I have one short message to President Ruto. President Ruto, the ultimate security and welfare of the people of Kenya rests in your hands. Yes. Please don't send us to the state where Haiti is. When you allow goons to come and disperse peaceful demonstrators on the streets, you are sending us to Haiti.
It's intergenerational, and something about the Chief Justice, the former Chief Justice Maraga, he's being floated to run for president. And he says,
should have done it a long time ago.
If you want me, I will come. And let me tell you, he didn't initiate that. It's the young people who went to him and said, Chief Justice, you served us well. You did the extraordinary. We want you to run for president. He said, are you sure? They said yes. And we see Omtata. Omtata is a senator. Very straightforward guy. Doesn't eat like some of them at all. He doesn't. He just keeps suing the government. Most times he wins. And so the young people, the Gen Zs, and now the Gen Zote, meaning all of us, we think Maraga would be a great president. And then the other day, I was watching a TV show, and one of the movement leaders said, if Maraga runs, we will pay for his campaign. We will not give us any money. We will collect money. And yes, these Gen Zs may not have jobs, but they have little things here and there that they do, the motorbikes, the whatnots, the vegetables, the fruits. They can make whatever little money, like you remember what we did with Obama out in the US, all of us, young people, and then of course we parents joined in. Everybody was giving $5 every week or something small. If you multiply that by the number of population, then Kenya will be able to get a decent president, not a president who has stolen money and is coming to invest in the people so that he can collect it right back. Kenyans can sponsor their own president. That's number one. Number two is the Gen Zs are ready to die for their cause. Many of them left obituaries this last time. They left obituaries to say, if I die, parents, this is ABCD, here is the money to pay for my mortuary. And they even left a message for the mortuary makeup artists, how they want their lipstick done or their beard or whatever. They were ready. They were going out there to die. Not because they are going to initiate war. They were going out there because they know who they're dealing with. They're dealing with the police who are either not well trained or oriented to kill people and to kill young people.
Na sunset. So sunset yake ni kesho. Sawa, ashaweka biology. Amepanga kila kitu, program yote ameshafanya. Unaget hawa ni watu wako serious na maandamano. Like they have nothing to lose. Msee ana job, anajua mimi sasa nakai maisha nikifanya nini, unaona? Maisha imenikalia, maisha imeni like tukutane kesho maandamano. Ona videos.
This is the last thing I want to say before I die tomorrow. They told us, go to school. Education is the key, they said. We sat in classes with no windows. We studied in torn uniform on empty stomachs. We believed them. Our parents believed them too. They gave everything. Sold cows, missed meals, broke their back just to see us wear that gown. And years later, here I am, graduated, jobless, hopeless. Turns out, the key only opens doors if your father knows someone. If your uncle is a big man, if your name already matters. And those of us without names, we stay outside, knocking, forgotten. Then they say, start a business. But even small dreams are not safe here. Kanjos will come, or even the goons they send. They won't just destroy your stall. They will scatter your future like trash. So, if I die tomorrow, maybe my parents will be given 2 million. Maybe that is more than I could ever give them alive. So, shoot me close range. Don't leave me like others, breathing but broken. Because in this country, we were told to dream, but never warned this would kill us. This country is not safe.
People, and many of them died. I mean, 20 people, even one person is too much. This time they just came to memorialize their colleagues and they died so. So Kenyans are ready, the Gen Zs are ready to sponsor any candidate who comes, and don't anybody think numbers are nothing. These people are the majority. In fact, I had in another interview, one of the young and upcoming political aspirants said, right now, if you are going for votes to elect a fresh, honest, good president, we don't care about those who already hold voting cards. What we need is the ones who have not been registered. And he said, my son is turning 18, and I want him to take a card and his fellow Gen Zs to go take voting cards and go and vote an honest, a real president who stands for the ideals that Kenya wants. So
I think
you are short, last short, you are parting short on Kenya, and then we transition to Togo. Go ahead, please.
No, I was just going to make a point about this. it is a lot about registering to vote, but what we need to really talk about is the technology that is involved in voting. We all know that there are organizations, mostly one major one based in Venezuela, that is known to be experts at adjusting voting. And there's many court cases across the globe whereby votes have been overturned as a result of discovery that voting servers were tampered with.
Yeah.
So the ideology that Maraga, Omtata, anyone who we choose or who Kenyans choose as a candidate is fantastic because it creates a sense of structure. It creates a sense of order, and we have a goal.
Yes.
But the other challenge that we need to start discussing openly and get international partners like the International Consortium and Investigative Journalists on board is to look into trends, data, and expose the organizations that are paid by governments to support and affect elections based on the candidate's request and the cost of the weight of the candidate's wallet, because that's taking away globally human beings and people's ability to actually choose who is elected. And yes, we can say all day long that we need a person in office. We don't care how we get it, but the long-term effects is that autocratic rule under the guise of democracy is much more widespread than we realize.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are my thoughts.
So, to your point, as somebody said it on TV, not on one of the channels, was that what is happening is when a leader is forcing himself on citizens. He called it, and I quote, that is a rape. That is forcing yourself on a people. You are raping them. And that is really a language that really goes to the core pain that ruling people by force inflicts. Whoever you are, when you reach a point where you're forcing yourself on people, you're stealing the young people's future, you are demoralizing grown-ups, parents, you are forcing yourself on the people. Dear viewers, we have just talked about Kenya. And a similar thing is happening in Togo. A very organic movement, or not even you can't even call it a movement. The youth are out on the streets. The youth are angry. The same family of Ayadema that ruled them for decades and decades and decades, his son is now ruling them. But the son thought he is very, very clever. And what he did, that's the current president of Togo, who has made a trick so that he's not called the president. He made a trick. His party is the majority in Togo. And so he got elected by his party as the president of the party council. Now, and then he relegated, or the country, quote unquote, the country, or the councillors, or whoever they are, the members of parliament, I don't know what they call them in French. They brought in an older man, I think he's 85, 88, some very much older man, to be the president, but he's a figurehead. All the power rests with the president of the council, which is the young man whose father had ruled Togo for the longest time, and now his son has taken over. Now, he thought he was being very clever because he did this in the back rooms with his party members, but then the Togolese people found out. And on the 24th or 25th, this June, the word came out and the young people were on the streets. They had been communicating, as they do in Kenya, through, internet and, all these other gadgets that we now have, virtual communication. And they came out on the streets and they have been protesting. And then on the 26th, 2 days later, the president brought tanks and whatever they are, the armored vehicles on the streets, to beat up the young people, to go into every house, beat their parents, take their phones. And of course, that has not stopped them. So Togo is still in a really, really bad situation, very similar to some of the things that are happening in Kenya. The youth are not backing off, and they're saying, because I hear this through translation, I don't speak French, they are saying that their future is being stolen and they're not going to sit back and watch their future being stolen. That is what is happening in Togo. We need to keep an eye on Togo. We need to have very positive thoughts for Togo as we do have for Kenya, to be sure that not our young people don't get killed anymore. So that is what is happening in Togo. Grace, you have anything on Togo?
Well, Amnesty International, for change, because I don't hear Amnesty talking about what's going on in Kenya. Amnesty International has been pretty clear that there are serious concerns about repression in the Togo. Now, Togo's saddest thing is that this president, this young president, has put out some internet, I guess, rumors that the AES, the Alliance of Sahel States, has invited him to join. It's just these are campaigns of mass confusion, by autocratic leaders who we all know are puppets of France, and whose military generals are part of the French Legion via, AFRICOM. It's an open secret.
Yes.
And I think what's happening, and it's not even the age of the internet, and various ways of logging onto the internet and getting information has really provided this new generation of African youth. And I think it started at Generation X, then millennials, then Gen Zs. It's kind of been happening very slowly as like an undercurrent with this really silent sea. But now you're starting to see the waves are forming. And generational presidencies are just not realistic.
No.
You doom your son to a violent death when you start thinking that you've run a country for 30, 40 years and your son will take over. There's a concern about that in Uganda. There's definitely concerns about that with the current Kenyan, presidency.
Yes.
These cases where you're seeing presidents ruling until the end of their lives. I mean, we have Cameroon, who's 92 years old, spends 90% of his time in a French hospital.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, France continues to extract. These are not sustainable environments for autocrats. You are just waiting, and the clock is counting down. The sands of time are flowing, and young people, whether you rely on your army or not, no matter how big your army is and how strong your guns are, you can only keep a people down for so long.
Yeah.
If you think that you're living in a bourgeoisie environment in perpetuity and the proletariats don't matter and they're nothing, history has taught us that the proletariats always come up. Think of Marie Antoinette. Think of European history alone.
Yes.
You find that when the people rise, they rise very violently. So it's always important as a politician to make incremental changes, but don't make changes that essentially shore up your power and keep you in a position of power. The Togo, we hope. I don't even hope for Togo to settle down. I hope for Togo to be one catalyst of Cameroon, Ivory Coast, etc.,
Yes.
etc.
Yeah.
Because Ghana and Senegal seem to have very, very smart and common sense presidents in relation to Sahel and West African states. Nigeria just gave crumbs to their people where they cut some taxes here, there, and the other. But still, River State has an issue with their governor, where a former governor who went up to the federal government in Abuja literally got him suspended, got the governor, duly elected governor, suspended, and now you're having a figurehead running River State People have said nothing because they're afraid. So the Nigerian and Kenyan youth, I know I'm blending, but Nigerian and Kenyan youth are meeting in many sessions and discussing ways and strategies, and it's happening all over. So autocratic leaders, whether we like them or not, it's not our business. We don't earn anything from talking about this in this blog.
Yeah.
But we're just saying that something is coming and it's not pretty. And the best way to do it is to essentially affect change now, because the population is the largest on the planet of these youth. They're
Yes.
giving the international community a hard time. What do you think they're going to give to you when they really wake up and strategize and coordinate?
Yes.
It's a problem.
Yeah.
Fix it now.
And they're the majority. And they're the majority.
Precisely.
Yes.
Globally, not just in Africa.
Yeah.
Globally. And we keep churning out young people. Every time you turn around, an African young person is turning 18. You know, and the age typically is 16 to 35. That's where the data is coming from.
Yes.
You know, and you see the numbers even go higher when you start looking at 16 to 24. That's where the numbers are super huge. 35 there is kind of, you know, but we're at a really critical point in African history, and leaders need to be awake. There's some that are waking up. Yes, see Southern Africa.
Yes.
And you see a lot of, things happening, but I can't imagine that Kenya, which is really the giant of East Africa, and people are calling their Gen Zs the true lions of Africa.
Yes.
The true army of Africa.
Yes.
I cannot believe that the political class in Kenya is so ignorant of the sea change that is occurring, and they're not advising the president on how to pivot accordingly. And I think it has a lot to do with foreign investment. They do not want any country with a democratically elected official suddenly waking up and saying, you don't get to do this, your conservancies don't get to do this, that, and the other. You get to remove your armies, you get to do all these things that we're finding out is actually happening in Kenya. So yeah, one day at a time.
It's very sad, and the international community has proven to be a double-edged sword, and part of it is really cutting the wrong way. Many Kenyans blame the current presidency on foreign influence, and well, the Venezuela thing is one, but there are also the Western countries who actually shepherded him into this presidency and propped him up. And, the people are upset. Their sense and their feeling and their expression is that this is not their president. And they were ready to accept him when he first came with all the promises. And we are talking about Kenya now, with all the promises. But then he just digressed into not keeping his promises. And then recently, one of his ministers, Murkomen, said that anybody who approaches a police station should be shot dead. And but Kenyans on the spot said no, I mean, on the spot. They didn't even, usually Kenyans would be quiet, then later on they will, no, people just yelled at him. And then,
ati wanapewa bondi ya pesa kidogo, alafu wasumbuke hapo wakuje tena kupigana na polisi, lazima ikwishe. Tumeelewana? Ile shida yenye inafanya hata polisi za wengine ipige wakora risasi ni kwa sababu wanashikwa, wanaenda, wanarudi, wanakuja kuchekelea polisi kuambia sasa tulifika wapi, hakuna penye tumeenda. Si ni ukweli? Na tumeambia polisi mtu yoyote mwenye atakaribia police station piga yeye risasi. Mtu yoyote.
These are the kind of things that you cannot lead people you don't love. Even what's happening in Togo. You cannot have tanks, military tanks, or military vehicles out on the street beating children, beating their parents, beating young people, and pretend to want to lead. How are you going to do that? How are you going to lead people you hate? Because what both presidents, both governments in Kenya and in Togo, they're not showing love. They're showing hate. They're showing intent to subjugate permanently. And I don't think anybody is going to sit for that. So,
what I don't
your parting shots if you want. Yes.
I was just going to say that I don't understand why politicians say such crazy things, because in every space there's an attorney putting pieces of what you say together and tying them into actions that are taken and will send you to The Hague. So I don't understand.
I don't see where they're coming from. I have no clue, because if these were people who didn't go to school, don't have law degrees, don't have whatever enlightenment we think they have, at least they should have humanity. You know, there's something called humanity, where you understand that, number one, the police station is where somebody runs when thugs and other odd people are chasing them. But now, if you if you approach the police station, you get shot. So which is which? So it is, I don't know, it seems like in some of these countries, the world is upside down. And so we just go ahead and conclude and say, we really wish well for Africa. We have always been coming up with good news, cheery news, but these are dampening news, but they are facts that we have to look at. We cannot bury our heads in the sand. We are not ostriches, because that will take us nowhere. So viewers, we again thank you for your viewing, for your comments, and we appreciate you, and stick with us. We will give you a lot of information that you need to know. By the way, those who don't know where Togo is up there between Ghana and Benin, I believe, at the armpit of Africa, just where Africa's armpit sits. Togo is somewhere there. And then Kenya is at the heartbeat of Africa in the east. Togo is at the west. Kenya is at the west. Where Africa's heart goes, yeah, that's where Kenya is, at the east. Next to, up north is Somalia, up to the east is Tanzania, and Uganda is northeast. So yeah, Kenya is there, you know, and then on the other side, on the easternmost side, is the Indian Ocean. With Togo, it's the other ocean over this side, in West African side. Beautiful country. I always went to Lome once a year when I was working for an organization which had an office in Lome. Every year I would go for vacation in Lome. Lome is a beautiful country. The Hotel Sarakawa, Hotel Dufevre, you know, beautiful place by the beach. So I wish Togo well. I wish Kenya well. We wish Togo well. We wish Kenya well. And thank you, dear viewers, again for your, you know, patronage, for your comments, for your dedication. We love you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.